Good evening, friends. My name is Rabindra Junjunwala, and welcome again to the lockdown conversation, which is becoming quite a feature thanks to our guests and the speakers who are so willing, available, and sharing their experiences. This is the fourth of the lockdown series. Takes place every Sunday, and where I bring a guest. We've had doctors so far. We've had a pediatrician, we've had a dentist, and we've had last Sunday specialist on the ground in New York, inside the ICU, fighting COVID. And today we have very special guests, two of them in fact, who have actually gone through COVID and have come out stronger. So we're very lucky to have two speakers, Anuraag Agarwal and Tarun Davda, with us today. I will introduce them to you in just a few moments, but hi Anuraag, hi Tarun. Thank you so much for taking the time out and joining us. For everyone listening in, I hope you're taking good care of yourself and you're adapting well to what we are going through. These are unprecedented times and we need to be extra cautious and more so with the lockdown being relaxed from tomorrow, and we are going to talk about that as well. Ask our speakers their experience and what their thoughts are with the lockdown easing. The idea is free-flowing conversation. This time we are doing it with two guests for the first time, so we will improvise as we go along. As I mentioned, we start with the questions which have been collected over the last several days on the WhatsApp group, what you've sent to us, and then if time permits, we are going to pick up questions from the chat box. So feel free to raise your question. I'm not going to promise whether we'll have time to answer all of them, but we're going to try and take them. Please keep in mind, our speakers today are not doctors. So what we need to ask them has to be very mindful of the fact that they are like you and I. And this is purely their experience that they are sharing. So very quickly, to introduce Anuraag and Tarun. Anuraag I've known for a very long time. He was a junior at school in Calcutta, and of course, professionally, I know him. He heads up the BD and strategy at one of India's conglomerates, and he's a former investment banker and a dear friend. Known him for many years, and more importantly, I know him because of what he does with the Art of Living Foundation, and we'll talk a little bit about how that has come into play with him, his mental strength, and what his thoughts and views are. We've had some offline discussion, so we'll ask him pointed questions on that. Tarun, well, all credit to your sister actually, because as you know, Rupali and us, we are school parents, and thanks to her, we've been able to get you on board. Thank you so much for taking the time out. We all know you as an entrepreneur, as a VC investor who's been part of this whole setup brigade for so many years. I'm aware that you're a ISB grad and an engineer too. And I know that when you're not answering your son's endless questions and wearing your entrepreneurial hat, you also have some interesting hobby, which also we'll talk about. So thank you very much for taking the time out, for being available to share your experiences. For the guests, I think what you should know, both Anuraag and Tarun are in their early mid-40s. They've had a very healthy lifestyle, extremely healthy, I would say, much healthier than me, for sure. So it's important to give you that perspective before we start. And Anuraag, in fact, with his art of living, with his yoga, with his meditation and all the breathing that he does, I feel he's probably definitely above many of us. So the immunity level with both Anuraag and Tarun would have been at a different level. They didn't have any pre-existing disease. And this is something which we also discussed to give you a perspective. And moving on very quickly, I've always been told, there is theory and there is practice, and there's a big difference between the two. In my profession, you're always told that you learn on the job. I think this is a great opportunity for us as listeners to get an experience firsthand from two friends who have gone through COVID and are COVID survivors. Keep in mind, we're dealing with an invisible enemy, and there is a fear of unknown. There has been a bit of a fear, phobia, psychosis, and these are some things which we are going to touch upon during the conversation. So without further ado, I'm going to jump straight to the questions. We have, as always, made three different buckets. First one is really the initial stage, the anxiety period. There is a second bucket, which is looking back from where Anuraag and Tarun find themselves today. And third and final one would be covering about the future, thoughts about how we should look ahead. And more so with the lockdown getting relaxed and some of us, most of us, maybe not, stepping out of our houses. So Anuraag and Tarun, again, feel free to add to one another's conversation. It's free flowing. We are going to go through a set of questions which have been collected. The first section, if I may, there obviously must have been some understandable anxiety when you got to know about COVID, and general thoughts on how it impacted or affected family members or whoever you came in contact with. So I'm going to group a first set of questions into two or three questions into one, and then throw it open to both of you. One is, when did you find out that something might be wrong? What were the first symptoms which you felt you were heading towards being COVID positive? And what were your first reactions? Did you just go into isolation, or did you do something else? So if you don't mind walking us through some of your early symptoms. And Anuraag, since I think you had COVID a few days before Tarun, I'm going to ask you to start. And then Tarun, if you don't mind adding to it. So Anuraag, floor is yours.
So thanks, Rabindra. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks for having me here. Happy to share and see if I can be helpful to anybody out here. So I think my trigger happened because I drank cold water. I usually don't drink cold water. And apparently the cold water affects the cilia in your throat. And I drank this cold coconut water, kind of some kefir or something like that, one particular day, April 29th, I think, or 28th. And then at night, again, I was not sleeping in the air condition quite often. But that night, decided to sleep again in the air condition the fourth night, and slept in the air condition. And the next day, woke up with all my sinuses completely jammed. And I just thought it's regular. It's a kind of, it must be something regular. It's unlikely it's COVID. The following day, I got a mild fever, 98, 99. And then the fever and my sinuses kind of started to improve. I immediately went into my Ayurveda and Ayurvedic and homeopathic medicines, and just kind of rolled forward. So all this while, 3 days passed, 4 days passed, and my fever actually became normal. So it went from 98, 99, 100, came down to 99, and one whole night went by without any fever. And I thought I was not having, I was not COVID positive. And then the fever came back. Again, rose after 1 day to 99, not 1 day, I would say after one night, went back to 99, 100. And then when it hit 102, that's when I first went and that's when I went and got the test done, which on hindsight was quite late. And then the test results came 3 days later. So it was almost the 7th, 8th day when the test result came that I'm actually COVID positive.
Okay, Anurag, if I ask you to pause a moment, and Tarun,
Yep.
in your instance, was it different, and how did you find out that you were you could possibly be infected?
Yeah, Ramendra, first I'll just start by actually thanking you for organizing this. It's a great initiative, and honestly, when Rupali asked me sometime, I think late last week, whether I would do this or not, I wasn't too sure. But over the last week since I've come home, I've got like more than a dozen people pinging me and asking me all sorts of questions. Obviously, there's a lot of anxiety, and so everybody wants to know what to watch out for, right? And so thank you for doing this. I think it's a fantastic initiative, and hopefully many people can benefit from learning from our experience. I'll start by just reiterating one thing that you said, which is neither of us are doctors over here, and so everything that we're saying is just based on one data point and our own personal experience. So just please take it in that light. It's not meant to be exhaustive. It's just meant to share about what we went through. So starting with my experience, actually not very dissimilar from Anurag. I think I got a fever first time on the 17th of May. I remember it was Sunday evening. I was at home and all of a sudden started feeling a little bit weak in the body, started feeling a little feverish, very little body ache, the typical starting signs of a fever. Measured the fever, it was a low-grade fever, it was 99. And it stayed 99 for almost 4 or 5 days. And I basically just continued, popping in a small, like a paracetamol, and, continued working from home. I've been working from home for the last 2.5 months. And I said, okay, what, it's a low-grade fever, it'll go away. I just started taking a paracetamol and continued in that fashion. But progressively after the third or fourth day, what I noticed was, the fever started rising. So from 99, it went to 100, 101, 102. So I think by day 6, maybe day 7, it was a consistent like 102 fever that I had. Throughout this, obviously at the back of our mind was, could this be COVID, right? But it's almost like, they say everybody thinks I won't get cancer, right? Cancer is something that everybody else gets, I won't get it. I think COVID is also in some ways, at least for me, it was similar, which is, hey, I haven't stepped out of the house too much. I've been careful. I won't get COVID. Right. And so while at the back of my mind it was there, it was not something which was sort of here and now, and especially the symptoms, like I didn't lose my sense of taste. I didn't lose my sense of smell. I wasn't coughing. I didn't have a dry cough till my day 5 or day 6. And there were no other symptoms. And so basically I just continued treating it like any other normal fever. I think day 5 is the first time where I started developing a dry cough. And the fever levels, like I said, started rising. And I think if I remember correctly, day 5, my oxygen levels. So thankfully, we had a pulse oximeter at home, which is something I'd recommend everyone on this group to get if you don't have one at home already, because it is in my case that was the single most conclusive thing that gave both me and my GP enough information that this is something that is not ordinary. It's not an ordinary fever. So I measured my oxygen levels. I think on day 5, it was plus 95%, which is great. But day 6, it started hovering in the 80s, 82, 85, 86. And I quickly Googled up and figured out that anything below 90, you need to be seeking medical attention and also getting hospitalized. And so I think honestly that was the trigger in my case. We spoke to my GP as soon as I told him about my fever not going away. And there was a time, I think day 6 or day 7, I was popping in like 6 paracetamols a day every 4 hours, but the fever just couldn't come down. And so we knew we were dealing with something different. It wasn't a regular fever. And then the oxygen levels only kind of, confirmed it. My doctor asked me, I think the good thing he did is, this was, I think, Saturday, so this was on day 6. He asked me to rush and get a chest x-ray done. As soon as the chest x-ray came out, they could very clearly see that on my right lung, there was what they call a ground glass pattern, right? And so there was a haziness, and what in medical terminology, they call it the ground glass pattern, which is very typical of a COVID patient. And so once he saw that, he basically told me that I should get my COVID test done. Just one small piece of detail I forgot, and my son is messaging me in the background reminding me that before this, I also got a dengue and malaria and all the other typical tests done at home. We had somebody come home, take the blood, and go. And all of that came negative, right? So that was the other thing that, okay, if everything else has been sort of coming negative, there's a higher likelihood that it's COVID. So I got my COVID test done. I went to the NSCI Dome, fantastic facility, got the test done. And again, this is where I faced a little bit of friction And I'm just sharing this because, some people may benefit from it, just sharing more detail, erring on the side of, giving more information than less. Basically, I had sensed that there were some doctors that were not willing to recommend a COVID test until they had got enough data that it's a very high likelihood of COVID, because there was a time, and maybe it's changed now, but when I was going through all of this and I kept talking to my GP and saying, hey, can I get a COVID test done? Can I get a COVID test done? It was almost like only government doctors can prescribe a COVID. And I think it's changed since then. They made private doctors allowed to recommend a COVID. But even then, there were cases where the BMC was canceling the licenses of those doctors if they recommended too many patients whose COVID test came back negative. And so there was almost a huge disincentive for the doctor to prescribe a COVID unless they had gone through everything else. And so it's only when my chest X-ray showed that pattern that the doctor was comfortable prescribing the COVID. I went to NSAI Dome, they did the COVID test. Believe it or not, my first test result actually came negative. And this is again something important for everybody to know, that from whatever data I have seen and heard, there is almost a 20 to 30% chance first COVID test coming out as a false negative. Because the way it's administered is it's a nasal swab. Depending on how far up that nasal swab is sort of pushed in and whether it's able to catch the virus, only then you will test positive. So in my case, it was like a 24-hour wait for the COVID test to come back. When it came, it was negative. Part of me was happy that, okay, I don't have COVID, but part of me was like, okay, then what the hell is this, right? Because we've tested everything else, it's come negative. So that's when we decided to actually get admitted to the hospital. And that's a whole different saga, and I'll cover that as part of another question. But
Sure.
Got admitted to the hospital, and basically, after that is when the real sort of care started. And the trigger for it was, we don't know what this is. Oxygen levels are low. We need to be careful and seek medical attention because we can't treat this at all.
Thank you, Anurag. I will come back to you, but Tarun, just so that you know, last Sunday when Dr. Vikramjit Mukherjee was speaker, he actually mentioned the level to be, as soon as it's 92, 93 or anything below that, one could really get worried and start looking at, COVID being one of the, and then we've had all the doctors on the call mention about the oximeter as well. So, thanks for reminding us. Anurag, you wanted to add some of your experience in that anxiety phase?
So I think, from an anxiety level, it was not so much to do with, I think, as you're kind of early on in this thing, again, the same thing as Tarun said, you were like, I don't think I'll get COVID, right? Especially since I was doing so much of pranayam and so much of meditation, so much of breathing and being extremely cautious, right? So the anxiety stemmed more from now what to do. Okay, now if you have it and you're calling your GP and you're calling someone and he's prescribing you some medication and that's how they start, everybody, and unfortunately the whole thing is like wait and watch, right? And that wait and watch period, and in the meantime, what you're doing, and from whatever little I've learned, is that the COVID comes slowly. Again, not a doctor, but from whatever I've picked up from other conversations, is that it comes slowly and then affects you. By the time it actually comes and takes root, if you've not really done something about it, it's taken hold, right? And that's when the problem starts. And that's what happened. There's the first few days, we were just kind of waiting and watching, and then the fever started rising. And then what happens after that is the whole anxiety of this whole kind of multiple, with someone recommending something, someone recommending something else, the doctor saying do this, do that. So that anxiety, which hospital to go to, which bed to get, that adds to the anxiety levels more than actually, if you think about it, at the end of the day, I had 8-9 days of fever, 99, 98, 3 days of 102, 103, little body ache, not much pain, got away easy from that angle. Right, so it wasn't that bad, but the anxiety is more from the kind of preparedness for it individually. That what if it happens to you, then what do you do?
And Anurag, what about your test? Tarun mentioned he went to the NSCI Dome. Did you go to a?
For me, so I went to Breach Candy Hospital. Out there, again, just where it helps people. There, they don't do the test directly themselves. They administer it, but then the results, then they have to send it to I think the SR labs. Right, which means that it takes, so I went around 4 o'clock and that day samples had already gone at 1 o'clock. So I lost one full day doing that, right? And so it was a Tuesday, it went on Wednesday to the labs and then came back on Friday, 48 hours later, and it went directly to the BMC. So I did not even get the result. The BMC directly called my wife saying that, hey, your husband's got COVID. And so that was another whole stressful factor, right? Because it's like, you don't even know what's going on. I'm like, maybe they've got someone else's result. Like, I've never given my wife's number on the form. How did they get her number? So there was a whole like other saga that came through. And then they wouldn't give me the result. They never gave it to me. And then I had to use my BMC contacts to get the result on a WhatsApp so that I could enter the hospital. Because Wockhardt wouldn't otherwise take me, or any other hospital wouldn't take me without that result. So those are the anxiety levels.
Interesting. So I'm gonna shift the anxiety question from you to the family now, and jump maybe a few questions in my sequence. Ask you, of course, knowing both of you and your families, there's an extended family. What was the reaction at home with immediate family and the extended family members when the first symptoms sort of came about, and what was that anxiety level? What steps did you take to make sure that they are protected? Did anyone else tested positive? If you can sort of throw some thoughts on that.
Tarun, you want to go first?
Sure. So in my case, like I said, Rabindra, I think the initial few days, I think like everybody else, we were in denial that it's COVID. And so while we kept, testing other things and all that, I don't think in hindsight, I don't think we maintained as much social distancing as we should have. I actually have a mother who's a cancer survivor. She lives with us. She's 76. And there were times she was in the same room with me to check in on me while I was running my fever. Now, in hindsight, those were things that we should have absolutely not done, right? But like I said, at that time, the last thing you have in mind is because I hadn't really stepped out of the house too much. 4 or 5 times through the entire lockdown, a lot more than we did, especially with sort of the more vulnerable set of people. Hey, I'm getting a message that my connection is unstable. Can you hear me?
I did lose you for maybe a second and a half, but you're back on. It did
fine now. Okay.
Yeah,
okay. Cool.
Now.
Yeah.
Tarun, in case your phone the Wi-Fi is on, maybe you want to switch the Wi-Fi off. That helps.
Yeah, it's fine. It's done now.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I think in my case, when like I said, I think we should have done a lot more, and we can talk about what we're doing in quarantine now, because in hindsight, we should have done all of that when I was, the first signs of the fever. What we are doing today, we should have done back then. I think overall, obviously, the family's been super supportive because I wasn't able to do anything myself. So between my mom and my wife and my sisters, basically they managed the whole thing. But I think when I remember the first time when the COVID test came negative, honestly, we didn't know how to react. Because on the one hand, we were happy that it's not COVID. And I remember my mom like literally celebrating that it's not COVID. But there was also a lot of anxiety that, what the hell is this in that case? And by then I was already in the hospital. And we actually did a whole battery of other sort of, respiratory sort of panels and other tests. All of that came negative. My doctor said, let's repeat the COVID test once again. We repeated the COVID test, I think 48 hours after the first COVID test. And then unfortunately, like I said, it takes another 24 to 36 hours for the results to come. That's when it came positive. But by then I was already 3 days in the hospital, right? Because I got myself admitted anyway because of the oxygen thing. And so honestly, like I said, it was, none of us really knew how to react at that point because I was already in the hospital. Fortunately, in my case, touch wood so far. So it's been about, today's the 7th day that I'm back home from the hospital. No one in the family has tested positive. No one has shown any symptoms so far. And obviously within that group also, I'm most worried about my mom given sort of the age profile. But she's been, like I said, knock on wood, doing really well, and hopefully will stay that way.
Sure. And obviously you alluded to a hospital, and I was going to ask you that question. Anuraag, you did as well. At what point of time did you need to get hospitalized?
So I don't think there was, Tarun, go ahead, finish yours and I can add to it. I mean, I think yours was clear. Yeah.
Sure. Rabindra, just to make sure on the question, you're talking about the hospital experience?
No, at what point of time did you realize that you needed to be hospitalized? In Anuraag's case, clearly the test was directly sent by BMC to somebody, and he was
Yeah.
asked to. So just trying to
So
understand.
in my case, it was very clearly the oxygen level. So the day the oxygen level started showing in the 80s, we spoke to my doctor. Doctor was like, okay, this is something that needs attention. And by then, like I said, while I had taken the COVID test, the result hadn't come still. So I took the COVID test, I think on a Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon. And the result actually, this goes to the Reliance lab in New Bombay. And so by the time you get the result, it's 24, 36 hours. So on Sunday night, I actually got myself admitted saying, and again, the thinking over there was we already knew getting a hospital in Bombay is extremely hard.
I have a few questions on that.
We all read about this in the papers about COVID and hospital beds are rare and whatever or hard to come by. The reality is it's all a statistic until it happens to you. When it happens to you is when you actually realize how difficult it is. And so for me, the single trigger was the oxygen levels were low, and both my GP as well as my family members, we all were like, you know what, it's okay to get admitted a day or two early. It's fine. We'll bear the expense, but you'd rather be safe than sorry, because if the oxygen levels drop even further, and at that time when it's an emergency and you're not able to get a hospital room, that's not a situation you want to find yourself in. And so we, like I said, we did it right at the nick of time.
No, thank you. Sorry, Anurag, go on, please.
Yeah, so I'm surprised, Tarun, that you actually got a hospital bed without the COVID positive, because Wokart was not letting me even enter without the.
Yeah, I'll talk about how we got that.
I think there's an interesting piece there, and I think we can jump to the next section, because the first section, these were really the questions that I had for both of you.
Rabindra, I think one thing I'll just add to that is, so for me, when I kind of got the test, the BMC actually said I could stay at home. So they don't want me to get hospitalized necessarily. I chose to go to the hospital, and I think it was a good decision in hindsight if you get a bed, because another friend of mine, similar symptoms exactly, was thinking about go hospital, not go hospital. I forced him to go to the hospital, and the very next day, his fever stabilized, but his oxygen levels fell, and he had to go to the ICU. So I'm just giving that as a perspective as to why the hospital worked out.
Very, very interesting. I hadn't appreciated that point. So thanks for bringing that up. Very, very, very important. So I'm going to move to the next section, where we are going to actually do a bit of looking back. And Anurag and Tarun, I know there were some issues in getting the right hospital, getting a bed. And I'm really going to ask you to share some of your experience, because in a way, reality, it's a reality check. And Tarun, as you rightly said, till it happens to you, you don't realize what you're actually going through. So I want to ask you a very pointed, broad question, and then I'm going to ask you a bit of your experience with the hospital, what happened, why you think it happened, but very broadly, sort of what was the biggest challenge you think each of you individually faced? Was it the delay? Was it the anxiety? Was it you didn't have the right medical advice? You didn't have the hospital? Or was it somebody at home that you were worried about? If you can spend a few minutes each on that, because each one of us would have a different one. And again, we will remind all of those who've joined in a bit late that we are not doctors on this call. This is personal experience. That personal experience can be very different from one to another. So this is a purely non-medical discussion. Either of you who would like to go first on that, what was the biggest challenge you thought in this whole saga?
Yeah. Anurag, you want to go first?
I think at some level it was the preparedness at home for it, of how do you kind of, I kind of quarantined myself the moment the fever started. So I did not wait for like any other kind of, so the moment the fever started, I was in my own room, and nobody was allowed except to just leave the food and go, or take the water or something like that without a mask. So I think there were 2 or 3 concerns that came up. One was obviously for people who have been in touch with me, over the last like 5 days or 4 days or 6 days, and the family. That was a big concern, right? Because you kind of feel like, okay, I can manage, but what about the other people, right? Number one. And what happens if I have to go, and if someone else at home also gets it, then how do you manage the whole dynamics around it? That was kind of bothering me a lot. So it was those unknown, that was, I think, for me, the biggest kind of challenge of people who've been in touch with me, people who've been in contact with me, what happens to them was a concern. And beyond that, I wasn't really worried. I wasn't really concerned as such, and everything happened pretty smoothly for me. It was, just kind of things happened along the way. So it was quite a breeze once kind of the whole thing took over. Yeah, I wasn't that worried beyond kind of the family.
So, sorry, Anurag, I'm going to take you back because I didn't appreciate that you spent some time at home and then you checked into a hospital.
Yeah, so in the sense, like, I remember my fever started 30th, right? And I checked in only on the 8th. So good 7 days, I spent one Friday to full Friday, I was at home.
So
while all this was...
So after you got your test result and after it was positive, then you moved into the hospital?
Within seconds. Okay. I got my result literally 12 o'clock.
Sure.
I remember I was sitting I was actually working that day. And through the week, I kept working. So there was no like issue. It was just like a normal fever, right? So I kept working, and then I finished and I was like sitting, and it was like one-ish or so like that. And Poonam walked in and said, BMC's called you are COVID positive, right? And so we kind of debated, should I go to the hospital, not go to the hospital? Within an hour, I got the hospital bed moved. Boom, done. 4 o'clock, I was in the hospital. That's
understood. Tarun, your challenge?
Yeah, I think in hindsight, I'll just quickly summarize because I think this is the important part for most people. I think what we did well and what we didn't do well, both I'll tell you. I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think maybe Anurag did the whole isolation bit much better than I did. In hindsight, I would change that and be much more careful because my wife was in the room with me, my son was in the room with me, my mom would come and visit every few hours to check in on me and all that. So I think that I would change. But I think what we got really right, and this is something I would just tell everybody, make sure you have a GP that you're in close contact with, especially a GP who has had some experience handling COVID patients. Okay, when I look back, I think at every stage, my GP was extremely smart, extremely supportive, gave me all the right sort of inputs and guidance. And so just having a GP, like, some people have moved to a different city, they are working elsewhere than, where they're raised, they don't have the right network. I would just recommend everybody, if you don't have a GP that you know well, please establish contact well before you need it. Make sure that the GP has had some experience dealing with COVID patients, because I think that is critical. So that's number one. Number two, and maybe I'll talk about the whole hospital experience, because I think that is top of mind for everybody. The moment we decided that I want to get admitted that night and not wait for the COVID result to come, what we did is basically just worked our network. So between me and some of my friends and colleagues, basically I think we would have made like a dozen or 2 dozen calls. Spoke to all the senior people we knew at these hospitals, all senior medical doctors, and eventually there was only one, like my B school batchmate. She owns Wokhart, and so she told me, Tarun, our entire hospital is jammed, but in my ER I have one bed. I'll create a bed for you. You just come. We'll figure it out. Right now, like I said, I was fortunate, and that we could do that. But again, my recommendation is for those of you who know someone in the medical fraternity, who know a doctor, this is the time to sort of keep those connections alive and those networks alive, because it is not easy. So I was able to get into Wokhart. I actually spent about 36 hours there. Wokhart was not my initial choice because the doctor that I wanted to get treated under, Dr. Hemant Thakkar, he only visits Beach Candy and I think Bhatia. And so he said, listen, I'm trying. Yeah, he said, I'm trying. But there is literally a queue of 50 or 60 patients. And so you just get admitted wherever else you can, and then we'll move you to Beach Candy later. And so I got admitted to Wokhart. While I was at Wokhart is when I got my first COVID result, which came negative. And we literally had, thanks to my sister again, who knows a very senior doctor who sort of is very influential in Beach Candy. We had 3 different doctors at one point in time working to get me a room at Beach Candy. And after all those efforts, it took them about 48 hours to get me a room. And that's when I finally got a move to Beach Candy and continued. But to me, that was the most nerve-wracking piece of the whole. That, you just can't get a room. And I think, Anurag, you made this point. At least in my case, both Wokhart and Beach Candy had what they call the COVID suspect ward, not the COVID positive ward. And so they actually have an entire floor which is only COVID suspect patients.
So,
and at least in my case, like I said, they allowed it, and maybe it was because of influence we used. Because there were some nurses that were telling me, how the hell did you get a bed? There are dozens of patients who are not able to get a bed, without testing positive. How come they allowed you? And I said, listen, I have no idea, and just treat me. But it was a little bit of like, I could see that I was in a privileged position that most other people may not have been able to get that.
Sure. In fact, I would want to jump to the question of the situation in the hospital and how difficult it was. Anuraag, if you wouldn't mind sharing yours.
My experience was fantastic. It was just fantastic in the hospital. It was like, to work hard as a COVID, only COVID hospital. They are solid, rock solid. I mean, right from the nurses, right from everybody out there. I mean, the entire experience, the food is what the food is. They're also doing their best. But the experience was rock solid. I mean, and for me, again, I said I got very lucky. I had a great room. I just hats off to them all along the way. Actually, even after the thing, they called me up a week later, 10 days. Is everything okay? And Kedar Taraskar, who's my doctor, he's been advising me even now and then, a little bit of cough here and there. My experience has been just super solid.
So I guess both of you fell in the fortunate lot to have got a good experience, have got a bed.
Rabindra, I've got like other people also, in terms of even so other people have been trying to get a bed, so I've been helping some other people also. And it comes. I'm not saying it's not that everything is available and it's easy and it's there, but sometimes it could take 2 days. Sometimes it couldn't take 2 days because they're discharging also very quickly. So it's not like they're keeping the patients there for long. Earlier, there were 2 COVID negative tests you had to get through. Now, after 1 COVID negative test, they release you and they keep you in isolation for 14 days. Right?
Actually,
so
in my case, they
are
do
discharging.
That. Huh? So in my case, they didn't do that. They discharged me before. I mean, as soon as my fever was not there for, I think 48 or 72
so
hours.
That's now.
They just discharged me. They said you don't
need
to repeat a COVID test and get a negative one.
Because I was finished first by second May I was COVID negative, right?
Correct.
So there they were being very super nice to me, and it wasn't that. I think the case hadn't built up that time to the extent. So they're discharging very quickly. So yes, you got to be. I think we'll talk about it in the next section where in terms of preparedness for it.
Thank you. So Tarun, in terms of Anuraag's experience, we've heard with the hospital. We've heard a bit of your experience about your batchmate trying to help you out. Did you sort of struggle with anything at the hospital? And I'm going to ask you both the question of infrastructure.
So very, very, very similar. Again, and maybe it is, both of us were fortunate we were in very good hospitals. I'm hearing horror stories about some of the other hospitals and how things are over there. But in my case, very similar, fantastic medical care. It's amazing how all the nurses and the ward boys are maintaining their cool and are continuing to serve everybody with a smile. It is not easy. I mean, they are packed up head to toe with PPE kits and masks and, multiple layers of clothes. It is extremely, you can see that they are literally drenched in perspiration because they are just covered in so much. And they're, dealing with literally dozens and hundreds of COVID patients. So it's not easy on them. There is also a lot of short medical staff. So there are nurses that are putting in 12 to 16 hour shifts. If a nurse was handling, 4 patients earlier, the same nurse is today handling 15 patients. So it's actually very, very, very hard for them. Despite that, I mean, they've done a fantastic job. In my case, just, the small nuance, and again, I'll share this just because, people should know what to expect. I had a room at Beach Candy till I had fever. The day, or I think within the second day after my fever went, I think, and everybody knows this on the call now, that BMC is actually now taken over all these private hospitals. And they're completely managing the show end to end. The hospital and the booking office has absolutely no role to play now. And so the day my fever went over, I was tagged as recovering, not sort of still, the peak is yet to come. And so they actually moved me from my room to another room where I was sharing a room with a COVID patient for the last 48 hours while I was there. I was actually given the attendant small tiny cot as an attendant bed in a room with another COVID positive patient. I think it was not pleasant, but it was something that, there was no choice. It had to be done.
Sure.
I can't say I was super pleased to be sharing a room with somebody else, especially in that scenario where you're just so close in those tiny rooms. But on my floor, where there should have been 12 patients, there were more than 25 COVID patients packed into those 12 rooms.
Wow.
And so they just don't have a choice. You just can't do anything. And then you need to live with those minor irritants of like literally doing everything on that one tiny bed and sharing the room with another patient and living with their eccentricities and their timings and all of that.
Yeah.
But it's fine. It is what it is. Like I said, I think the key thing is, despite the fact that the medical infrastructure is literally bursting at its seams and they just don't have enough medical personnel, I think the medical care is just outstanding.
Interesting. No, I mean, there's clearly some positives coming out of it, but I'm sure each one of us will have our thoughts and views about the healthcare infrastructure and the readiness that we are living in, and each one of us in our profession would have multiple connects and be reading about it. I don't know. You wanna just quickly share your thoughts on what you think is the readiness of our hospitals? And mind you, we are getting into a relaxation where we haven't even peaked, and tomorrow onwards, I don't know how many more people we'll see on the street. Are we ready to have based on your experience, do you really think we are ready to have our healthcare infrastructure support things?
So I think it's very local. I'll share my thoughts. I think Bombay, Delhi, Chennai, I think these are the three hotspots right now in the country. Thankfully, Bangalore has been spared. Thankfully, I think Hyderabad has been spared. Some of the other sort of cities aren't as bad. But as far as Bangalore, Delhi, and Chennai are concerned, I think, and more Bangalore, Delhi, less Chennai, I think and I've been seeing all the case count with, by state, by city. Unfortunately, in Bombay, the number of cases has not started declining, right? The case count, I remember we were adding about 1,200 new cases a day in Bombay till about 2 weeks ago. Today, we're adding about between 2,500 and 3,000 new cases a day. Right. We just don't have the hospital capacity. The BMC has given up doing contact tracing. So I don't know at the time of Anuraag, when he was detected COVID positive through the MySetu app and all of that, which Arogya Setu app, which all of us must be using. I marked myself as COVID positive the day I was detected because I had Arogya Setu app downloaded before. I thought that next, moment that I marked myself COVID positive, BMC would come and they would, trace everybody in my family and who all I had met and get them tested. None of that. They don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the capacity. All they've said is now we would only treat the symptomatic patients. We don't have the time or the energy or the infrastructure to go and do contact tracing. And this is maybe unique to Bombay. Maybe in Delhi it's different, but I can tell you in Bombay, they are not doing contact tracing, right? I think the biggest issue with the lockdown, while I think in hindsight, the lockdown was the right move to do, it was never an end in itself. It was always the means towards an end. And the means was that we should have got our hospital capacity ramped up, which, again, I don't think has happened to the extent it should have happened. The reality is that the peak is not behind us. We've not been able to flatten the curve. The cases in all these cities are growing. So Bombay has more than doubled in the last 2.5, 3 weeks. Delhi has 5x in the last 2 weeks. Karnataka has more than 5x in the last week. So the case count is increasing, and I think it's going to get harder to get a hospital room. One other advice I would give everybody is, at least again, it was only my case, guys, so take this for what it's worth. But every building, every housing society, every complex should try and get 1 or 2 oxygen cylinders in the society, so that in the event that you go through something like what I did, which is what most people go through. It's a very simple oxygen tube. Oxygen therapy is what it's called. It's a nasal cannula. You put that in your nose, and basically you're getting oxygen so that your lungs are basically getting the support that they need. If you ask me, that's literally, other than the medication, that was the only thing that was done to me in the hospital. I didn't need a ventilator. I didn't need intubation. I didn't need anything else. Now, in hindsight, if I didn't get a hospital room, but if my housing society actually had a oxygen cylinder and it's available in the market, it's not hard to get, I think it can really save lives. Because these cases are increasing. I don't think we're able to add hospital beds as fast as these cases are rising up. And so, unfortunately, I think we will continue to face these problems, and they will become even more acute over the next month or two.
Sure. So while I mean, neither of your doctors, this is your experience, and we leave it to the medical fraternity and the housing societies to go and ask the doctors living there to give their thoughts on this. But Anuraag, anything before I move on?
On this piece of preparedness?
On
or the infrastructure?
On the infrastructure.
I don't think our infrastructure, if we rely on only the hospital system to bail us out, right, and not be prepared ourselves, it's not going to work.
Yeah. I mean,
you have to be prepared at home. Look, I for sure, the numbers are much, much more than the actual numbers are, right? In my home, in my home, we've got 4 people. I was kind of tested. The other 3, one is a child, but the other 2 were not even tested.
Sure.
Forget about testing, right? So the point is that they could have got it. It's been a month now and they haven't got anything, right? So it's kind of, they're sailed through.
Yeah.
But the fact is that we're not ready. If like everybody starts going to the hospital, it'll be very difficult. So we have to be prepared in advance, have to do home preparation and be ready for it.
And we'll come to it. I have some pointed questions there for both of you to share your thoughts on.
I think it's going to collapse if everybody starts running there.
Absolutely. So can I ask you, and maybe you still are looking for that answer, but what did you do well during the lockdown in terms? I mean, I'm sure each one of you would have taken precautions, and in spite of that, you managed to find the virus, and the virus managed to find you. Could you identify? And Anuraag, you did mention about that cold coconut water, but could you identify how you got the virus, or was it a slip, or it was again the unknown coming in? Did you figure it out pointedly that okay, it may have been this? And you can sort of you don't need to you can sort of give the answer more in a positive way that okay, this is possibly what you could have done, because I know, Anuraag, you wash your phone and wash your keys after coming back home, so I'm still trying to figure out.
I was paranoid about it, so that's why so I was kind of surprised that honestly, like with the level of 2 levels of preparedness, right? One is physical kind of thing, which I was doing, precautions of having a bath, like every time I went out, doing all that kind of stuff, right? Washing my keys, everything would be like washed, right? Completely. So all that was happening. And on the other hand, I was like mentally also kind of, from the pranayama and meditation, all that stuff was happening, right? So the immunity levels were high. But yet, literally it could have been, I remember one day I kind of was with my daughter seeing a movie, and we opened this bag of biscuits, and I just ate the biscuit without washing my hand. And when I was eating it, it struck my hand that, hey, oops, I've eaten something, or there was like bhujia lying around and I just had it one day. Those small slips could have been the cause, right? It just could have been that, literally, or there were some boxes lying around like in a store which I picked up to kind of play with at home with my daughter. That could have been it. It's as simple. The computer, files, anything, like, it just could have been there and I touched my hand and then never washed my hand before eating, and that's it. It's over. So I think that was what it was. Honestly, as simple as that.
Okay, moving on, maybe Anuraag, did you have to actually go through a test before you left the hospital? Because Tarun clearly was marked recovering.
Yes, I did.
So do you want to just tell us about that?
I was marked COVID negative.
You were?
Yeah, the moment the fever went down, immediately the next day they did the test. I was kind of surprised at how quickly they do the test and how can it come negative so quickly, right? How can the virus leave me so quickly? But literally Saturday, my fever started to go down. Friday itself, Friday night, I got admitted Friday evening. Saturday, it started to go down. Sunday, I had no fever. Monday, they did the test. And Tuesday, it came out as negative. That's it. It was very quick.
And Tarun, could you think of what could have been the reason where there was a slip up?
So in my case, it was a little bit more complicated. I actually returned from New York City on March 13. But it's been more than 2 months, so it's unlikely that it was lying dormant in me for that long. But I returned from New York on March, I think, 12th or 13th. Completely fine. I've been working from, in fact, even when I came back home, I had quarantined myself for some time. And then the lockdown got announced. So basically, I've been home for now, more than 75 days. I think in the 75 days, I would have stepped out maybe 4 or 5 times for groceries, and maybe stepped out like 2 or 3 times to just get a walk around the neighborhood. So me and my wife went out, we took a walk, maybe in a 1-2 sort of kilometer radius around the house, and came back. But all through, wearing a mask, maintaining social distance, not interacting with anyone, blah, blah, blah. So it's very, very hard to say how you got it. My best guess is that at one of these stores that I went when I was picking up groceries, I may have touched some surface. That surface must have been infected,
Sure.
touched my face, done whatever, rubbed my eyes, whatever it is. And so it's almost impossible to say. Obviously, the first thing you get detected, your mind keeps wondering, how did you get it?
Yeah.
But I mean, there is no way to say how you would have got it. It's extremely hard to say.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, but I thought just in case you had some idea, that would have gone a long way to keep the attendees thinking.
Yeah.
But moving on, how was it? And maybe this is a question which I should be asking your better halves and family members. What were the preparations when you moved back from the hospital home? That quarantine phase, and was there any specific things that we are doing about isolation, washing clothes or keeping utensils separate? I really think I should have asked this question to your family members and better house, but some thoughts, both of you.
Yeah, I can go first.
So I actually, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I think like this say, you're better prepared once you actually go through it, because you start taking it seriously. Honestly, I mean, I'm taking it much more seriously because of my wife and my family, who have been extremely particular ever since I've come back. So I came back home from the hospital, and trust me, that's again a hard part, because you don't want to be sitting in a car with another family member. There are no cabs available. I mean, the smaller logistical issues around this whole thing are a different conversation in itself. But anyway, my brother-in-law was able to help me get a cab from somebody he knew. He sat in his car behind. I was sitting in the cab in front. Dropped me home and all of that. But I think once I came home, I've been basically under quarantine for a week, at least, from my wife and kid, and then I'll be doing another week specifically with my mom, just to be extra careful.
Sure.
But as for the doctor, I need to maintain 1 week of complete self-quarantine. So I've been in my room. I haven't stepped out. It's been now 7 days. My wife very kindly has given me a broom and a cleaning cloth and washing liquid detergent, with which I clean my utensils, my clothes. Everything that I got in from the hospital was immediately put for a wash and soaked for 2 days in sort of, detergent and all that before we put it in the washing machine. But my food comes in a tray. It's left at the door. I open the door, I pick up my food. It's mostly in disposable plates. And so I basically, eat my food, put it inside. There is, little to no interaction with anyone in the house. Like I said, I don't step out. Nothing in my room leaves outside. The only thing that comes from outside to inside is my food, which comes in disposable plates, which I eat and then I dispose them off. Even small things like my garbage bag, every time it fills up, we tie it up. BMC actually had come to our building and marked it as a containment zone for like a few days after I was detected. They actually gave special bags that, my stuff needs to be put into and left so that it's handled in the right way. And so, my wife will wear the gloves, take that, garbage bag, leave it outside, for it to be taken away. So now we're actually maintaining very, very tight and strict sort of isolation. Like I think what everyone should be doing, and I should have probably done when my fever was detected in the first place. But like I said, this is not something that the patient can do. Your enabling infrastructure at home actually has to be able to think through each and every of these, things about food and cleanliness and your clothes and all the articles that you're touching and all of that. And so all of that has been, basically done. So right now the situation is my mom is quarantined in one room. My wife and kid are in another room, and I'm in the third room. And none of us have any interaction with each other. Thankfully, we have, staff at home who cooks, who leaves the food, respectively for each one. We don't, and like I said, because the risk is that because my wife and kid were so close to me through my fever, they may have caught the virus, but they may still be asymptomatic. And so we still can't run the risk of my mom getting it from them. Sure. And so we've in some way isolated the three sort of constituents. and are just currently staying that way. So it's a little bit like a jail ka kaidi kind of environment, but it is what it is.
You make it sound very simple. I mean, I'm just thinking about it and hearing about it, how tough it must be for the family and especially for young kids.
Yeah.
I mean, I know both of you have young kids. I'd be very interesting if you want to share. Only if you want to share
Sure.
how.
Yeah. So Ravindra, go ahead.
Managing.
Go ahead, Tarun. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Tarun. Yeah, go ahead.
No, so the question was about how the
Family,
especially the
yeah.
child has sort of managed it.
Especially the child.
So initially, I think he was obviously, like I said, the fear of the disease is more harmful than the disease itself, right? Especially for, people in our age group, well healthy, don't have any other morbidities. I think the good news is that 99% of us will be fine, right? It is actually only the more vulnerable set of people above the age of 60, 65 with some other comorbidities. Those are the ones which are high risk. Now, obviously, my son has been reading a lot about this, but like I said, when it comes home, all that reading goes out of the window. So I think he was anxious for that moment when I was leaving for the hospital because he had no idea, what this means, and I was going all alone, and so it's obviously a stressful time for the family. But after that, he was doing video calls with me morning and evening, 5 times a day while I was in the hospital. He saw that I was fine. I was able to speak. I was energetic. I was cheerful, and so I think, other than the time where I left for the hospital, where he was obviously very, very worried and anxious. Literally after that, he's been very good. Like, he's been super brave, very courageous, managed it very calmly. In fact, and even while I've come home now, in many ways, he's the one who enforces all the strict isolation and makes sure we don't do anything. So.
Well done, Anurag. You had to answer both the questions together.
Yeah. So my experience was different. So what I did was, right out of the hospital, I went straight to a hotel. I went to Taj and got myself quarantined out there for 14 days. So I avoided the whole home drama because I knew it becomes a risk at home. So I just checked into the hotel, and 14 days, actually I was 16 days out there. And it's very convenient, right? They just come, they give you the food, you eat your food, you have your room. They'll come every 3 days, clean the room in PPE suits, and you're done, right? And so it was like easier that way for me. No dealing with the home issue of like, what if I infect someone? So I was actually counting the days till that 14th day that I left home, that was for me the critical point.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I was away from, and my daughter's kind of still, she's 7. So it's kind of still at that age where obviously she missed me a lot, but it kind of, I mean, I missed her, but it was fine. Somehow you kind of went through it. It just happened. It did affect them, clearly. But it's okay. You got to go through. You got to do what you have to do. The other kind of things that you can.
Yeah. No, sure. No, thank you.
It was very easy. The hotel was very easy. Honestly, it's highly recommended. I would say, if you can get something good, because it just saves so much of other tensions at home. Because otherwise, you're literally tipping on. You're just kind of walking on eggshells.
We can probably have a full session on what you did those 14, 16 days in the hotel, because knowing you, you would have done a lot of your art of living classes and courses, but we'll come to it later. I know we are getting close to that 1 hour mark. Are you guys all right to spend a few extra minutes?
Sure.
Anurag, will that be okay? Anurag, have I lost you?
Yeah, I think Anurag's network may have.
Okay, we'll wait for him to come back. I'm sure. Yeah, I think Anurag, you're back. I think I lost you. Hang on, I have to. Can you unmute yourself now, please?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Anurag, I was just asking, and Tarun is okay with that. I know we are getting to the hour mark. Is it all right if we take a little longer today?
Yeah,
because,
sure. Yeah.
Thank you. So, I'm going to jump straight to the next bucket, and the big bucket, which is about looking ahead and really looking at your thoughts and suggestions on how we should live our life as we move towards this whole debate of relaxation, right or wrong, moving away from saving lives to livelihood. And there's a fear, there's a paranoia on one hand, and then on the other hand you have maybe some callous attitude or casual attitude that, oh, it's over, it's done with, we've been in lockdown, now it can't come in. I've seen some pictures in the morning from the morning walk at Marine Drive. I'm assuming it's true, and if I see it, I'm really shocked to see the number of people out there not maintaining social distancing. I also appreciate that sooner or later people will get it, but generally this section, if we can talk about how to be prepared, and how important is aftercare, or is it not that important? And last weekend, the doctor did mention about the second wave. He did mention about person could get it once again. So that is, you can't be sure. So what's aftercare, the meaning for you? How are you preparing in this stage? Your immunity, is there something special that you're doing with your immunity? And Anuraag, I would definitely want you to spend a few minutes on what you do, because that is very interesting. So some thoughts around that. Tarun, if you want to share some thoughts. Anuraag, if you want to start, I'll leave whoever's ready, whoever has some thoughts ready.
Anuraag, why don't you go first?
Yeah, so I look, my simple philosophy out here now, Ravindra, having seen and having spoken to quite a few people now back and forth, is simply that if you are going out, you are going to get it. Or if someone in the house is going out, you're going to get it, right? Or someone in the house is going to get it. Most likely you'll end up being asymptomatic if you're healthy, and most likely, but the chances are pretty high. So better to be prepared, but not afraid, right? Because most of us are living in this fear of, oh, what if I get it? What do I do? What do I do? And that actually becomes the biggest problem, right? Sure. So from my perspective, it is better to be prepared, know what kind of medicines are being used typically, so that you know where to get them from, not necessarily stop them right now. Otherwise there's a run on that also. But if not, it's standard stuff, get it ready. Get that, again, I'm not a doctor to prescribe those medications, but I've been in enough forums where you can figure out what's the standard protocol. Get that, get the oxygen cylinders, be prepared at home that, okay, if this happens, this is what I'm going to do. If I have to call the doctor, if I have to go to a hospital, this is the process. If I don't get a hospital, also I'm okay. I'm not going to die, I'm not going to live in paranoia. Obviously be careful about when you go out, not go out. But then the end of it also, it depends on your immunity, because this is a long-term play. It's not going away tomorrow, right? And what happens is you have to look at our psychology, where when you're so cautious of, okay, we got to go wash our hands, we got to do this. At some point, it becomes tiring. Every time I got to use my, at some point it will become tiring where you're not going to do it every day. You'll be like, "Arey, kuch nahi hota hai. I've not got it for so long, so big deal. Big deal. Nothing's going to happen, right?" And that nothing's going to happen mindset can get you into trouble. So the only longer term play is you got to get your immunity up, and that means you have to increase your energy levels. You got to increase your prana levels, your life force in you. And, you do it through better food, your sleeping habits, your health, your lifestyle. For me, what's working is definitely a lot of pranayama and meditation. And it's working really well for me. It's been worked. You've experienced it as well. So I do that regularly. And I've seen the difference in my energy levels. And honestly, I feel the virus touched me and went. It wasn't really an ordeal per se, right? And I think, I was very aware, for example, when I was going through the ordeal, very aware of where the virus is in my lungs. I could feel it, right? Because of my pranayama. I could, if I felt low in energy, immediately I'd do some kind of Ujjayi breaths and increase my prana level, right? And that would make, or if I'm feeling a little bit of cough, just meditate. It was really very, very, I was hyper aware of how this thing is playing out in my body. And that made a huge difference in being able to monitor it. So I would highly recommend that the only long-term solution is build immunity. Because as you said, if a second wave comes, what are we going to do, right? The new variation of the virus comes. What do? You can't not go out. You can't not do that. You have to go and buy groceries at some point in life.
Sure.
You have to step out at some point.
Yeah.
So prepare yourselves rather than fear something, because the more you fear it, you're just fearing the unknown. You imagine the worst that will happen to you and you get afraid. But I'd rather just look it straight in the eye and say, look, this is what the virus is about. This is what the facts are. This is what I can do to prepare myself, and let's move forward.
I think you make a good point that you have to be sensible about things. You need to be mindful that the virus is still out there, but take the precautions. And I see some questions on the chat box. A lot of them are very medical related, so I'm sorry, I'm not going to ask that. But you must go back to last weekend's recording, and I will repost it on the WhatsApp groups. A lot of those questions about second wave, second time infection are mentioned there. What protocols to follow? Our guests today are not doctors, so I don't think it'll be fair to ask them these questions. Moving on and coming back to you, Tarun, Anurag, any other thoughts in terms of preparedness, aftercare, immunity, even mental health?
Yeah. No, so in my case, I was doing a lot of the same things that Anurag said. So ever since I've come, I mean, I generally take a multivitamin tablet every day. In the every single day of lockdown, I've had 1,000 micrograms of vitamin C every day. Had my multivitamins. I generally do about 30 minutes of meditation every morning, or at least 5 days a week. So I do my deep breathing anyway every morning. Generally high immunity. So like I said, you can do all these things, and my mom also has been very good with getting, making sure that I was having hot turmeric water every day. So there's a lot of these things that, frankly, I did, but in hindsight, clearly it was not enough because I ended up catching the virus anyway. But I think the immunity level helped me recover much faster. So if you ask me, there were maybe 3 days where things were a little bit severe, where my oxygen levels were low and my fever was high. But other than that, I was able to manage it really well through through the build up as well as the recovery period. Like I literally within 48 hours of my fever going away, my energy levels were completely back. I was able to, versus sleeping 16 hours a day, I was able to manage with my 6-7 hours of sleep. I was awake through the rest of the day. I came back from the hospital. Literally the next day, I was able to resume work from home again. And so I think the immunity level does really, really help you in that fast recovery.
So thank you very much for sharing that. Well, that's been an exceptional and exciting journey. Thank you for sharing all that you have shared. Anurag, did you want to talk anything about the immunity building specifically? And I know you alluded to a few things on that meditation, but anything in particular? Because of the courses you do and the yoga you do.
No, it's like in terms of, it's basically 4 things. Like it's food, good food, healthy food. Avoid the things that are reducing your life force. For the people who love drinking alcohol, unfortunately, that does reduce your immunity. Sugar does. Those kind of things, which are standard stuff that people know about. You got to be cautious. You have to take that right now. So food, good sleep, good rest. In some ways, it's nature's forcing you to kind of come back to your roots, right? To come back to those things that kind of were important and self-reflect, and that really helps. I'm telling you from my experience, and Tarun, you added to it as well. Pranayama, meditation, it's been really, really helpful for me. Recover faster, just have a better, more positive state of mind. I wasn't afraid of going out as well. I wasn't like, I'm not going to go out because of this virus. I was just like doing what I had to do. Obviously being extremely cautious about it when I went out. And I don't think, because at the end of the day, as I said, you can't be afraid of it. You can be prepared for it, because being fearful in any ways kills your immunity, right? It secretes hormones that will anyway kill your immunity. Right? So what's the point of being afraid of it? Just know, okay, I'm going to get it or may get it at some point. If this happens, I'll do this. 99.9% I'll be fine, right? And in any case, if something else has to happen, it'll happen. But not be foolish about it and say, okay, because of that, let me go and hug everybody out there. So it's a fine balance, honestly. That's it.
No, very, very, very well said. Tarun, any final words?
No, I think the same thing here. Unfortunately, it looks like it's going to get worse before it gets better, and so all of us need to be prepared that at some point somebody or the other may get it, and hopefully sessions like this, thanks to the ones that you guys are organizing and other people are, I just think getting the right information. I think the fear of the unknown is what is the biggest problem, and especially with lockdowns and curfews, and every morning, every night, all our WhatsApp groups are filled with different cases around Corona and COVID. I think it really builds a lot of fear in the minds of people. At the end of the day, like I said, 99.9% of the people will come out of this. It's like any other bug. You get the bug, it's a flu, it'll get out of your system within a week and you'll be fine. Right? There is a category of people for which it is fatal, and for those people you have to be extra careful. But for most of us, we will be fine. And so just hopefully, like I said, sessions like this, it kind of helps dispel some of that fear, and people are better prepared to manage these things.
No, very well said, Tarun, and it's a perfect time to sign off. There was a talk about being prepared, and the first session when we had Dr. Santosh Agarwal, a pediatrician from Calcutta, we circulated sort of a SOP, a medical SOP from his clinic, and what I will do is post that. To an extent, it'll help you to keep prepared, but of course, there would be other things to be done. I think I've taken up a lot of your time, Anuraag and Tarun. I'm going to say thank you very much for those of you who are still logged on, and we haven't asked your question. I'm so sorry about that, but the medical ones had to be skipped. The recording of the previous sessions are all available. I will post it on the group. The recording from this session as well, I will post on the group. Do listen to the previous ones, especially the one from last Sunday. A lot of your medical related questions will get answered there. I did have one comment on the chat box, somebody wanting to say something towards the end of the session, but I don't know. Your name is not showing. I'm not very sure whom to unmute, and so if you wanna show up on the video, and we'll see. Anuraag, Tarun, more strength to you and yours. I think your family members really deserve a big round of applause for managing and for going through all of this. I can only say stay safe. I can only say a lot of blessings, a lot of thank yous on the chat box, and also thank you very much for answering some of those questions on the chat box. I see that you all have been busy doing that. I would only say please stay safe. Take care of yourselves, take care of your families, and I hope the session is a learning experience for others. It has been an immensely learning session for me, and keep spreading the good word. The relaxation is going to happen from tomorrow in a phased manner, and there are people from different parts of the country who've logged on. Please be mindful. Please take back what non-doctor COVID survivors have had to say. Be brave, deal with it, be prepared, but don't be foolish. Don't drop your guard. Don't do something which will get the virus in. But of course, move on with life. Immunity is important, and aftercare and taking care is very important. Well, I'm going to sign off there. Please stay on the group till I circulate the video, which I will later tonight. And Anuraag and Tarun, super thanks. Thank you with I don't know how to thank you guys enough, because you take time out to do this. You share your personal experience, and you educate all of us. So
no, I think the bigger thanks is due to you.
To organize it,
because I think just organizing this has been a fantastic idea. Like I said, I'm sure both Anuraag and me and everybody else that has gone through this is getting hundreds of pings one-on-one to share the experience, and I'm sure he's done some version of a few calls with people. I've done the same, and this really will help. Hopefully, kind of keep it in a place where we can just share this with a much larger.
Well, I mean, the video link is going to be there. Video link is going to be there. You should just share that. Absolutely.
No, seriously, Ravindra, it's really good. Really
fantastic
good
initiative.
No, thanks very much. It's weaved very well through the session. How it started, and then last time that a doctor fighting it, and now COVID survivor. And I may just take a break since lockdown is going to get relaxed. This is really a conversation around lockdown, so I'll see how to weave it further. But thank you very much
thank you
again, and thank you everyone else who have joined. Great to have you all. Please.
Did we just lose Rabindra? I don't know if I'm audible.
I think we lost him. I think we did.
Yeah. Let's just give him a second. I think he was concluding anyway. Okay, I think I'm seeing the participant count is dropping. So it looks like, guys, we are done anyway. Thank you everybody for taking out the time, and hopefully the session was helpful for all of you. I know I actually learned just listening to another COVID survivor story. So Anuraag, thank you for sharing your personal experience. And again, a reminder: this is not medical advice, so just please treat it in that respect. And I think June will be posting the video of this on the WhatsApp groups, as you mentioned. So please stay on the WhatsApp group till then, so that in case there are any unanswered questions, you joined late, you can go through the recording. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Tarun. Very nice to meet you.
Bye, everyone. See you.
Bye.